So you're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world. We're very fortunate on this show to bring you some of the world's best athletes, sports people who work in sport in different disciplines, coaching, analysts, fitness coaches, psychologists. We bring you fascinating insights of people who work around the world as well, different roles around the world, getting an idea of what happens in different parts of the world. And we also start a new segment bringing you some of the world's most influential psychologists, and we've had some really, really big names in the field of psychology recently too. We're going to keep bringing the biggest names in the field of psychology and sport. Today we take a trip across to South Africa, a really interesting interview today, and we all know South Africa as a rugby nation. We remember the World Cup, obviously, going into the Rugby World Cup with a lot of confidence. England, and obviously on the day, South Africa were probably a little bit better prepared. But we'll get insight today, not in the men's game, we're going to get insight into the women's game. And one of the things we want to do on this show too is promote women's sport heavily as well. It's really important that we get the message out there. So we're going to get insight into what rugby's like from a women's perspective in South Africa. And we've got a great insight into today's show, a Rugby 7 Springbok Rugby 7 competitor, Christelene Steinhobel. Thank you for coming on board the show. Great to have you for the interview.
Hi Jimmy, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, it's
talk some rugby today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. So I suppose the best place to start, Christelene, is your own career. How did you go? How did you sort of decide to play rugby?
Oh, Jimmy. So I went to Liga University as you did, and I got a scholarship to play cricket at the MCC side there, and it was so random. I made some rugby friends, and eventually there was an alumni rugby match like Bath University versus Loughborough University, and I was just fangirling on the side, and there was some sort of injury, if I remember correctly, and my friends just said, like, Christelene, you're in. They gave me some boots and some gear, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I scored my first try. And yeah, I think the bug bit, and I kind of checked it out. I went to a couple of training sessions, had no idea what I was doing, enjoyed the physicality and the challenge of it, and it's obviously very different to cricket, and eventually ended up going for the Sevens as well, played in Newquay, played at Allianz Park, and all sorts of stuff, and it just kind of happened from there on. And then when I moved back to South Africa in 2015, I just continued my journey.
That's really amazing stuff, and you're a talented athlete. You can sort of play cricket, and obviously you sort of turn your hands to rugby, and you sort of ended up playing, for the Springbok. What an amazing achievement that is! And what was it like, Christelene, when you first put the Springbok jersey on? Obviously, you guys wear it with tremendous pride, and what does it mean to you to sort of, to be able to sort of wear that jersey with pride?
Oh, it's a feeling it's difficult to articulate and put into words, really, and there's so much sacrifice and hard work that from every athlete who represents the country will know exactly, what I'm saying is that you just can't really put it into words, and all the people that's worn the jersey before you, and that's paved the way up to now, to put that jersey on and represent your country just is out of this world. And I think what it also means in the future, so there's been some females who've paved the way for us to where we are now, coming from some very difficult trading circumstances and things, and we're so much better off now than what we were 6-7 years ago, but there's still such a long way to go. So absolutely. I think the pride also lies in that paving that way forward. So yeah, it's a feeling you can't really describe.
And I sort of get the sense, the last Rugby World Cup, I sort of got the sense that when South Africa won the World Cup, from the interviews that I was sort of watching on TV, that it meant more to them than just the tournament. That sort of makes sense, really. It was almost like bringing some sort of unity through sport. Obviously, sport's not going to solve the world's issues that we have, and every country has its own, problems unique to them. But I just felt that it meant a lot to the South African team on a broader level, and to the people. Is that the case? What was it like to sort of obviously to see the team win the World Cup and be world champions in the men's game?
Yeah, Yeah, it was something insane to be a part of in this country, and like the celebrations were going on for hours and hours the next morning, and the unity in this country afterwards. There's so much positivity and like a breath of hope and fresh air for people to unite, and for sport to be able to do that to a nation is incredible. The impact that a team can have in uniting a nation, and that really goes into the pride that we have for that Springbok that we wear on our chest when we walk onto the field. So it was just something insane, and even in our own training environment, that extra little bit of energy and hope that you have, that we're on the right path and something's going in our favour and something's being done to progress sport and to bring everyone together. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely, and sport certainly does that. I think sport can make a huge difference. It certainly brings people together in many ways. And sort of going back to the women's game yourself, where do you sort of see the Springbok team at the moment in terms of where do you see things going in the next few years? What's the aspirations, Christelene? Well,
yeah, Jimmy. So we're currently obviously there's the world circuit for the sevens, men and women, and a few years ago the women were actually on the circuit, but then how it works is that you've got your top 12 teams, and then the bottom one drops down, and there's always a qualification tournament for the almost the league below, and that it's like a winner takes all competition. So that winner gets promoted up to the circuit, and that bottom team from the circuit level drops down. So we're currently not on the circuit. So our aim is to get ourselves back onto the circuit and to just survive there for a couple of years, so we can actually get some quality game time, quality opposition. Because that's what we're lacking in South Africa. We hardly play any rugby in our own country, and it depends on our finances for the year how much we actually get to it. So I would say probably about 70% of every season we train more than what we play, and we're really hoping to change that in the future, so we can just qualify, get ourselves onto the circuit, and just kind of leave our squad there for the future generation, because a lot of us are not going to play for that much longer, and we individually and as a team have our aims and dreams to go to the Olympics. Like we have qualified for the Olympics twice, but through South African regulations and things like that, they're just not sending us. So we still have that dream that we're holding on to as well. So we're definitely we're on our way. It's getting better, but there's a lot of work and investment to be done in the women's game for us to progress. Yeah.
So if this may be sort of a difficult question to answer, but if the Olympics was to go ahead, obviously next year, all things being well, Tokyo goes ahead. Is there a chance that you guys can go to Tokyo, Christelene? I mean, it'd be great to sort of see you guys get there if possible. I mean, would there be a chance for you guys to sort of qualify for Tokyo, all things being well, if it went ahead?
I think, unfortunately, the qualification process won't be redone.
Okay.
I think the fact that we played already, the qualification, they're not gonna.
Of course, yeah.
Be able to overturn that decision that was made, and unfortunately for us, the initial decision from our sporting government was overturned eventually after a lot of fuss, but they're not going to do it now. It's too late. They've already announced, and I think there's a lot of politics that goes into it. So Kenya's government, sporting government, was very keen to send them once again, and they can't just kind of take that away.
Of course, yeah.
Committees, once everything's been submitted, I don't think they can change it again. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a chance for us.
No, that's a shame, and obviously, players like yourself who sort of have been a big part of the team, and I mean, obviously, you have a background in coaching, performance analysis as well, and with yourself, have you sort of are you thinking about maybe turning your attention and taking, you obviously a talented athlete, you've sort of, been over to the UK, Loughborough as well, you've got a lot of experience, you've been around the sporting elite for a long time now. Do you think it's possible for you to take a performance role in the team? Is that something that you sort of see yourself going forward, being maybe, a head coach, a performance analyst with the team going forward?
Yeah, there's definitely a few options that's been kind of thrown around, especially in the last couple of years, as I'm a senior player, and there's been some chats about maybe me, like I might be a good candidate for head coach in the future, and some chats around that. So I've been trying to build a bit of a profile, so like getting involved with some coaching, like academies, and trying to start up some coaching academies for women and things like that. But I think my passion lies with the analysis, and I'm currently doing my master's in performance analysis at Worcester Uni, so part-time, and it's going really well. I'm enjoying it, and there's so much more I think I get out of the analysis side of it. So I think as you, Jimmy, like, I'm really intrigued by how the human being functions, and how we can get the most out of them in a day-to-day basis, but also on a performance level, because there's so much more than just statistics and raw data. There's so much more than a person that makes you a complete athlete. So for me, it's really interesting to tap into that side of stuff and kind of look after athletes' well-being a little bit better, and contribute to the coaching and management relationship in understanding each other, so we can build that really versatile and positive environment for performance. So I'm really going to tap into that. I think that's probably where direction I like to head into.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And for our sort of listeners wondering what performance analysis is, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have sort of watched the rugby and seen some of the professionals on their laptops and talking to the head coaches, and we've sort of seen all that. Just sort of give an insight in terms of what a performance analyst does. Christelene, what would you do as a performance analyst, just for our listeners, so they've sort of got a bit of an insight into what you would provide the team and the coach?
Yeah, so a performance analyst, obviously, the first thing that you think is that they do the coding of the matches, and they get clips of individuals and set pieces and plays, and you pick up trends and patterns to sit with the coach and basically give them an insight into. The coach might look at the footage or be next to the field and say, well, that was a shambles, that half that didn't work, so we're going to make these subs. But if you have an analyst, they can actually tell you what exactly you need to change. So it might not be the fact that we can't have a rush defense. It might just be the fact that we're just not in the right channels. So it's just a different way of looking at it. And instead of the coach just saying, okay, well, this is not working, it needs to change, the analyst is just there to refine that and say, well, you don't need to change your whole game plan. You just need to make leg tackles instead of, ball and all tackles or things like that. So just a bit more insight for the coaches and the players, and kind of after match analysis and pre-season prepping and those types of things are big contributors to setting up a stable and safe environment for players to thrive and hone in on their skills and things like that. So it's just a fully all-encompassing, I would say, role that the analyst plays in creating a safe environment for people to learn optimally.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. And I think, having said that, I think the other side of things too would be, let's say, for example, you're an analyst and you identify certain players that may have certain, vulnerabilities. Obviously, to the rules of the game, I'm not suggesting sort of fly in there and do any sort of, tackle that sort of breaches the laws of the game, but maybe sort of deny a certain player amount of space, or just sort of, maybe target sort of individuals in a team that, I mean, watching from the World Cup passively, I thought South Africa did a really good job on every opposition they played. They just, through the tournament, they kind of were quite humble. They never talked themselves up, and even when they played some of the less traditional nations, they showed a lot of respect, and they had a game plan, and it was amazing, and what planning can do. I mean, is that one thing that an analyst does is provide that sort of planning and sort of, obviously at that level, when you sort of talk about the big teams in men's rugby, New Zealand, South Africa, England, Australia, there's minimal sort of levels. Can analysts give that sort of those millimeters to help win a game?
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely analyze your opposition, and you can almost get yourself that competitive edge over the opposition by thoroughly analyzing, how they play against some of the, if you maybe watch like Six Nations and stuff, like how New Zealand teams play against each other versus how they play against South African teams or Australian teams, and analyze their strategies, and even throughout the World Cup, you can look at the same things and go, okay, well, this was their approach to this team, and then to a higher ranked or lower ranked team, this was their approach, and the analyst works so closely with the coach. They have to have such a solid relationship with the coach, and there's a lot of trust involved between the analyst and the coach, and the players as well. So you have to gain the players' trust, because they have to buy into essentially the coach's game plan and philosophy. So it all has to blend really well together, and the analyst plays a very critical role in creating that whole environment for everything to function well. So I would say, it plays a massive role in performance and what comes next and what needs to be done.
Yeah, no, it's interesting stuff, and obviously you're sort of really committed to your own career and moving forward and moving the game forward, the women's game forward in South Africa. Would you ever see yourself maybe making the transition across to the men's game? Would that be something that you'd be interested in doing? Obviously, on the basis that there'd probably be more commercial opportunities at this moment in time, from a professional point of view. Would you consider that, Christelene, to go across?
Yeah, sorry, Jimmy. Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I think absolutely necessary for going forward and for my future as a performance analyst, to be able to work with both men and women, and potentially both codes, 15s and 7s, just to keep yourself up to date with rugby as a whole. And 15 strategically is very different to 7s, and but I think the environments that you need to create should be very similar. So that safe environment for players to trust the coach, and vice versa, and how to get the best out of your players. So I think that stays the same, but definitely working with men and women is evidently very different in many ways on and off the field. So one thing that's almost stands out like a sore thumb is that for men, they just need a stable environment to train well, and for women, you need to create a safe environment. So a stable environment is very different to a safe environment, and that then links to the way that you speak to players, how you speak to the team as a whole, how you speak to the individual players, and how you deliver your messages in meetings and on the field. So those things are very different for men and women, and I think that's a trick of the trade. So if I can work with both men and women in the future to upskill myself in that communication level as well, then I'm definitely gonna jump and take that opportunity.
Absolutely, and sort of obviously get the best out of yourself and develop your own career as best you can, and that's obviously any professional wants to sort of be the best they can be. I mean, one thing that's sort of evident is obviously from the women's game perspective in South Africa, it doesn't seem to be, when I say developed, in terms of the men's game is obviously, they've won the World Cup, and in 7s they're always extremely competitive as well. The women's game, it doesn't seem to be as developed in that sense, Christelene. Is that a sort of fair assumption to make, or in terms of obviously people like yourself hopefully can help bring the game forward in South Africa?
Yeah, definitely. I think globally, some women's sporting codes, and if we just stick to rugby, I've made some good progress, like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, those type of countries, and South Africa, unfortunately, as much as of a rugby country we're not as I wouldn't say supportive, but we're just not there yet in terms of the foundation and integration levels for women. So there's still no rugby in schools primary or secondary schools, we don't. Here and there we have touch tournaments and tag, and it's more social than anything else. And from a personal experience, if you do approach a school about rugby for women, they're very skeptical. They don't want to buy into the idea, and for their various reasons. But it's definitely something that's lacking. So for the men, we have incredible feeding systems, and from primary school to secondary into university for the men, it's incredible how many opportunities they have to be seen and to be spotted from a young age and get tracked actually by head coaches from a young age, like 15, 16. And for the women, we're almost desperate to find women who can slot into our senior system. We have to go looking for individuals who are skilled enough to join us, but we know it's going to be a long, hard road for them to actually get up to standard. So it's a very different story for us, and we really need to work on that grassroots development in South Africa. And I think the main thing in South Africa is funding, and it might be the same for most countries. And I think it's the idea and the tradition that South Africa struggles with, that women don't play male-dominated sport. So that needs to change. And I think hopefully that is going to change now that we've been included in the Cape Town Sevens circuit tournament. So because we're the hosting country, we automatically play there. We had the first one last December, so hopefully from now we'll get a little bit more airtime. Quite a few more people, you can see, well, there's a women's sevens team, and this is the brand of rugby they play, and hopefully a little bit more investments from companies or private, or just from our own rugby union. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more time and attention to our development.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's quite inspiring how you sort of turned your career to rugby. I think that it's really amazing how you sort of through chance and coincidence you sort of played, and then you backed yourself to sort of play and obviously get to where you are now. What's the road been like for you, Christelene? There's probably other women listening to the show maybe in a similar situation to you, thinking, okay, well maybe I'll sort of turn my attention to rugby. And obviously, has it been a lot of hard work for you? Have you had to sort of adapt to train, and it must have been challenging in terms of adapting to the different sort of training regime and refocusing your energies as well, and from going to cricket.
It's been an eye-opening experience, to say the least. I've kind of always had a very high work rate and work ethic, and that's come from a young age. And I think from cricket being such a, I don't want to say it's a stationary sport, but you're like kind of standing in the field for quite a while, and now and again you have to move, and it's not as fast paced as rugby.
Absolutely, especially sevens as well.
So that was quite interesting. I remember struggling so much, like hands on your knees. The 7 minutes feel like a lifetime. And I remember actually playing one of my first tournaments for the Springbok Women in Dubai, and I was so tired. It was against the French ladies, and I looked at the clock, and there was only 3 minutes gone in the first half, and I was like, this is the end of me. Like, I don't know how I'm going to cope. It's just insane, the level of intensity that you require, and physicality as well. It's absolutely brutal. And
absolutely.
Everything's done at a high speed. So it's not like 15s where it's collision after collision in a short space. There's so much pace and explosivity involved, and the hits are tough. And I mean, the training itself, like the amount of fitness and gymming that you have to put into it's an enormous amount, and your body does get quite tired. But it's something that I absolutely enjoy. So pushing myself to be better and stronger and faster if I can. I'm not very quick. I'm not a winger, so but just all of it is just, it's the biggest challenge that I've ever had to take up in my life physically. So I quite enjoy it, to be honest.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. And I mean, I've sort of played a little bit just recreationally sevens, and like you says, I mean, after a minute you look at the clock and think, wow, there's still, I mean, the lactic build up in the legs, and from doing a few sprints, and then like you says, you throw in the physicality as well, and the sort of intermittent sprinting, and it's incredibly demanding. I mean, I think it's there's a good case for people playing recreationally. Maybe sort of tag rugby where it's not the physical contact. Obviously, in terms of just for fitness wise, it's just incredible. Sport. 14 minutes, like he says, that sort of lactic build up is just incredible, really. And do you train yourself obviously at the moment we've been locked down and all things else, your training may have changed, but do you sort of what sort of training do you do, Christelene? Do you sort of do like sprinting and do you have a coach that sort of helps you with your own training?
I'm quite lucky. I have quite a few hills around, so I'm currently doing the odd hill session. I've kind of tapped into we've got a semi-built house next door, so I kind of just went into their garage and took like paint cans and cement bags, and I built my own squat rack, and I'm just cracking on really to try and almost, I don't know, kind of replicate some training exercises that I know is on our program. Should we have a normal gym, and just kind of like going for half an hour runs as well, and trying to do as many like bodyweight exercises, and we've got some speed bands and stuff like that. So kind of just maintaining, but it's nothing near as much as what you require, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, I think, Jimmy, for me the thing that stands out the most is like the mental toughness right now, like the mental challenge to stay positive and to stay motivated to actually get up and go and do something every day, even though you don't know what you're training for at the moment and why you have to push so hard on your own. It's very difficult to push yourself to the limit if you're just by yourself instead of having your teammates around you. And I think alongside the physical toughness and stress that Sevens has in your body, I think mentally as well, if you think about a tournament, you're playing 3 games, it's only 7 minutes aside, it's only while I have time to put like meditation or journaling or stuff like that, just to keep yourself mentally in the right space as well.
Absolutely, I think that's makes some really good points there, and it's not easy. Certainly, a lot of the athletes I've spoken to at the moment are finding it sort of challenging, and like he says, I mean, keeping on top of things physically and also mentally too, and sort of the uncertainty of the situation. But I suppose it sort of puts sport in perspective, really, in one sense, in terms of health and what's been going on around the world. But we can only hope that things get back to some sort of normality, and we're seeing now certain sporting events start to sort of certain leagues and sporting leagues are starting to re-establish themselves again, and I think it's really important for the athletes to sort of keep mentally strong as much as they can do, but also the other side to it too. If people are struggling, then it's always important to get the right help for themselves. If they're sort of never be too proud to sort of get the help that they need if they are struggling. But it's been really, really fascinating, Christelene, speaking to you. And just sort of finally, what's the future for you, Christelene? Where do you sort of see yourself from where you are now, all things being well, and sort of rugby starts again? And what's your vision moving forward for yourself from this point in your career?
Jimmy, I really am focusing so much on finishing my masters and doing a decent job on that alongside obviously the rugby. So I definitely still have. I'm holding out for the Olympics still. I know that we've qualified twice before, so we do belong there. We do have a place in the Olympics. We just need some politics to fall into place in South Africa. So I'm holding out for that in the future, and I also really want to go to Commonwealth again, because I made it to the Commonwealth Village the last time, but unfortunately I suffered a grade 2 tear in my glute max medius, and I got sent home straight away 3 days later, so didn't even get to play. So the Olympics, the Commonwealth, and then qualification for that World Circuit, that's my sort of my short-term and long-term goals for now concerning rugby, and then after rugby, definitely going into that performance analysis side of things.
No, it's fantastic, and hopefully with all things being well, the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, obviously Loughborough is not too far away. That'll be a good boost for you in terms of getting back to maybe you guys can train at Loughborough. Great facilities, obviously, and what a great opportunity that would be we'll certainly keep an eye out for the Springbok Women's Sevens team, Christelene, that's for sure. But I want to thank you for coming aboard the show. It's been great speaking to you. It's been really interesting for our listeners, no doubt. Thanks, Christelene, for coming on board the show. It's been great interviewing you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy. Cheers.
Fantastic. That was Christelene Steinhobel. She plays for the Women's Springboks Rugby Sevens. Fantastic insight into her career thus far, and no doubt there's plenty more chapters to write for her. So great insight into the world of women's rugby in South Africa. 94.4 FM, Friday Sports Show. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, on the Friday Sports Show, Salford City Radio, 94.4 FM. The Friday Sports Show with Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you all the latest news from around the world, the local news, and we're very privileged on this show to bring you some of the world's best athletes, footballers, sports people, and we've had a news segment as well, bringing you some of the most influential people in the world of psychology, in some really influential people in the world of psychology, mental health, a segment as well, and we had some fascinating guests recently who've worked around the world, really influential people, and it's amazing how we get these guests and we bring you news from around the world. Today we have a guest from all the way from the other side of the world. He's been a guest before. He's given us some interesting insights into football development, but also he's made the headlines. Again, the national newspapers, the Sydney Morning Herald, I was reading about a young player making his way to Europe, and we'll hear a bit more about that. It's some positive news. Obviously, it's been very challenging the last few months, and obviously at this point it's a pre-record. So at this moment in time, it's a pre-record, and we're in sort of lockdown in the UK, and I don't quite know the full implications of what things are in Australia. Our guest at the moment who operates from there's academy, but equally obviously anything that sort of anything around training and that sort of stuff, we sort of follow the guidelines we've been told anyway. So Tony Basha, welcome to the show from the Australasian Soccer Academy. Great to have you on board.
Always a pleasure, JP, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, no, it's good, mate. It's as good as we can be. It's obviously challenging times, and we're all aware of that. And I mean, it was great to see some positive news. Ehode Arimoto, a young 17-year-old lad who's sort of making his way in the game. And what sort of player is he, Tony? From he's on his way to Villarreal, I believe. The newspaper. And what sort of player is he? How would you describe him as a player?
Look, he's in the same mould of probably like a Patrick Vieira. Strong midfielder, tall, tough. Very, very good number 6. Can also play centre back as well. Very big and tough and skillful. He's a good kid. He's half Cameroonian, half Japanese. So, and obviously Aussie. Yeah. So there's a 3-way tug of war.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, he's young. Obviously, at 17, he's got time to make his mind up, and I don't know what the implications are. Obviously, in terms of if he plays for one team, and when he needs to decide. But as a young player, he'd like to think that he can make a calculated decision as to what's best for him. But it just shows the stature. I mean, to be in the national newspaper, and obviously to have those countries. Looking out for his development to try and get him involved in the setup shows he's got immense talent, and you must be really pleased for him. His family, Tony, was his family sort of really pleased for him to sort of get the opportunity to sort of go to Villarreal?
Yeah, look, he's got a beautiful family. He came to the academy at the age of 9 years old, and I told his dad, so this kid's got something special. So go fast forwarding now. I was right, but he's obviously worked hard, and he's trained hard, and he's a good kid, and always puts in, so he deserves it, and he comes from a good family. His parents are over the moon, and they're a great family, obviously very respectful people, so it's good to have them on board.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's also a boost for the Australasian Soccer Academy in terms of, obviously at the moment, things aren't easy in terms of the situation in the world. I suppose in one sense, sport kind of, as great as sport is, and as much as we love our football, obviously the big picture is that there's a lot of challenges that we sort of face, prioritising health, and obviously business is going to struggle. But it's nice to get this positive news to see if you're willing to work hard and put your head down, that you can get somewhere. And do you find it's a boost for the academy, for the younger players to see that it's possible, you can do it? I mean, Villarreal is a great club. Do the younger players look at him and think, you know what, if he can do it, then maybe we can do it too?
Yeah, definitely. It's a good shout. Obviously, the boys at the academy see players like this move on. Obviously, 3-4 months ago we had Christian Valpardo signed at AS Roma. So that's 2 massive signings in 1 year. So, it's fantastic. And obviously, Mitchell Duke, who got selected for the Socceroos and other players from the academy. So when they start seeing things like that, they start to believe. And I always, to remind them, say, look, those guys are training with you, look where they're going. Why can't you do it? So look, there's no excuses, there's no barrier for someone who wants to make it, that's got to work hard, and we've got the right tools to give them a go.
No, that's a great point, and we had a guest on the show recently who deals in the psychological element of, and he's sort of worked with so many top sports people, athletes and teams, and he sort of echoed that sentiment, Tony, where excuses, and obviously people can make excuses, and there's no doubt that certain things come up in people's lives and challenge, but it goes to show that if you really want something and you've got the ability, if you focus, you can do it, and that's a great example for the young players going forward. I mean, your thoughts on Villarreal, Tony? I mean, they're a great club, Villarreal. I'll tell you a story about Villarreal, Tony. Years ago, when I was doing some work for a team called, not a team, but an academy called Provision. It was sort of founded by one of the founding members, ex-Man City, Andy Hill, and he invited me to work with him. And that's where sort of Kingsley Williams, who you know really well, who sort of played for you too, we spotted him. And we actually went on tour, Tony, to Spain, and Villarreal were in the competition that we were playing out there. And I was really impressed, Tony, with the ability, the technical ability of the players was incredible. Just the way they played and stroked the ball and the passing, the movement. They weren't too fussed about the score line, which, obviously winning is important, but they were more keen on developing players. And is this a great opportunity for him, Tony, to be in that sort of football cultural environment in Spain where they just technically are just head and shoulders, we've got to admit, above obviously a number of countries in development?
Look, 100%. We hit nail on the head. They're big on development, and that's a problem that we have in Australia. We shy away from development. So it's important that we see countries like Spain and even England, mate. Like, to be fair, I spent a bit of time in Man City. But Man City's doing excellent things. Man City's got Spanish coaches, and they're doing Spanish things there. And I've seen some of the young kids coming through, mate. They're fantastic. Yeah. So, look, it's for an Aussie boy to be over in Villarreal is awesome, and they become a better player being around that environment and around these people and the players and the coaches who are full time. So look, good luck to the kid, and the life is ahead of him, and he's just got to work hard. Like I tell the players, something I told Christian, who signed a 3-year deal at AS Roma, is I'm not going to be happy until we get a first team deal. I don't get excited, but they're there and they're in the mix. So it's up to them to pull their heads in and work hard. Yeah,
I mean, exactly, Tony. I mean, that's all you can do. You provide them the platform. I mean, one thing for sure the Australasian Soccer Academy does, and I can vouch for this, having sort of worked with you guys and continue to work with you guys, is that you provide the platform there. It's over to you, basically, and the exposure's there, and the infrastructure's there, and the coaches are there, and I think the great thing about what you guys do, and I can speak from experience, is you sort of you offer a development program that mirrors, like you said, the likes of European football and football in the UK, like City and that sort of stuff. And is that something, Tony, from your experiences of visiting City and visiting Spain, that you've been conscious of putting in a development program for me that is sort of unique in its own sense? It's like what you haven't done, I think, is sort of tried to do what some teams do, try and go like for like. You've blended it in to the culture in Australia, and to sort of to blend into the development in that way.
Yeah, 100%. So what I do, as you know, I travel the world and I pick different things. So if I go to Real Madrid, I go to Man City, I go to Japan, I go and pick different things out and I bring it back to the academy. But the big thing with the academy is obviously, it's no secret for people that we have good contacts around the world with clubs. Maybe in every country in the world we have good contacts with people there. But obviously we need the good players. So now that we've started a full-time program, as you're aware of, you've been doing work with the boys yourself with the NLP, which is helping them a lot. They're getting more confidence as people and players, which is good. We try and we got a good. How can I say? It's a good environment. It's a friendly environment. It's a caring environment, and the boys get taken care of. And our training sessions are, top class. We've got the gym and we've got the good facilities. So we're lucky that, we have that.
Yeah,
so it's awesome.
What's great too is obviously that for me, what's really important, and for any young players listening, and you mentioned obviously the work I've done with the young players, and this is one thing I sort of mentioned to any young players listening, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are, is that the academy is a leveler. It doesn't matter whether you're playing in an A-League team, whether you're playing in an NPL4, Step 4 team. It levels things out, and what I've noticed there is quite interesting. Really, I mean, there's no egos there. If you are or have played at whatever level you've played at, the egos are sort of flattened out, Tony. Is that something that sort of you've brought in and made a firm approach yourself and said, okay, egos out the door. Doesn't matter where you've played or where you've been. You're here now, and you'll get an equal chance to do the best you can.
Exactly. So with the players, like I've actually found a player recently, 20-year-old who was playing park football, who's come as a refugee from Myanmar. It's in Asia. The guy was playing Division 4, the absolute freak. Like this kid is going to get a trial overseas soon. So we do, obviously, it's all about attitude and respect, and that's all we're about, the academy. But yeah, in saying all type of players from all levels, you always find a good one, and we've found one who's played Division 4 in Australia, because unfortunately the coaches in our country, well, probably 80% of them can't spot talent, and it's a big problem.
No, absolutely. It's really interesting stuff that you say, and I'm not sure if you saw the interview a while ago. Mark Viduka, who obviously was a great striker, a great footballer for Australia, fantastic talent, who went on to have our listeners will sort of be aware, a great career in Europe and England, and he sort of echoed the same sentiments. He felt that they weren't sort of tapping into sort of people who are in the know, which is really important, and I think recruitment is big, and it's one thing nurturing it, but spotting a player, Tony, is huge. And is that something that you think comes naturally, spotting a player, or is it something that sort of over the years you get it with experience, or what are your thoughts on spotting talent and finding talent?
You can't spot talent unless you've seen talent. You know what I mean? I've been around the world. So I've been lucky enough to watch different players in different countries. I know what a good player is. Like this, the player I signed at AS Roma, he was in the scrap heap. He came up to me and he rang me. He said, "Look, I want to join the academy." I said, "Okay, where you been playing?" He was at the Wanderers youth team, West Sydney Wanderers. He said, "They got rid of me." So I invited him down, and I looked at him. After 10 minutes, I pulled him aside. I said, "Listen, mate." I said, "Who got rid of you?" He goes, "Oh, this guy." I said, "My God." I said, "You're a player. Give me 6 months with you, and I'll send you somewhere." So I trained him for 6 months. I could see this guy's a superstar. He's a left footer. He's quick. He can take players on. He's sharp. He's strong. Good physique. Fast. I've trained him up 6-7 months. Put him on a plane at AS Roma, and then I signed him for 3 years. And now Francisco Totti's his agent.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible
He's
stuff.
seen him. Totti's seen him. And he goes, "Mate," "you remind me of myself, because I want to sign you up."
That's amazing.
So he's one of Totti's players.
Wow, because I think Totti's son actually plays for Roma as well, Tony. If I'm correct in saying, I'm pretty sure that Francesco Totti's son is actually at Roma in the youth setup as well. But they have got a great youth setup at Roma, that's for sure. They've produced players like Zaniolo, who sort of is an immense talent at the moment. He's injured at the moment. He's one of the most exciting prospects in Italian football. He really looks the business. So what a great place to be, Roma Football Club. It's a phenomenal youth setup there, which is great for his development. But I suppose true to your word, you've developed him and providing him with the opportunity to go out there. And I think what's really important too, Tony, as you mentioned that, is that for me, I don't know what your thoughts are. I think sometimes what happens is, the coaches make it about them, and that becomes an issue. I sort of noticed over the years more and more the sort of coaches, what you guys do really well, and I've always said this, and I've said this on radio before, you don't make it about you guys, the coaches, you make it about the players. And for any sort of academy or people listening who operate an academy or you've set up, I think you're well placed to comment on this, Tony. Is it really important the coaches make it about the players and not themselves, and let their own ego get out of the way?
100%, mate. It's at the end of the day, you're there to do a job, and it's about the players, it's about their welfare, it's about caring about the player. That's important, man. For me, is loving the player. Like you got to love them like your own, and you want to help them become professional. They're not all going to make it, but but you still need to care for them, and they come as boys, they leave as men. That's a guarantee we have at the academy. We teach them a lot of things about respect and working hard and respecting their parents and respecting people. It's a massive thing about the academy, and obviously the player comes first because we're just the coach. We've done what we had to do. We've lived our dreams. It's helping them live theirs.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I find sometimes, Tony, it's a great point you've made there. Sometimes I find, in my experience, some of the best players don't make the best coaches because sometimes what happens is that they see talent differently. When I say the best players, I think sometimes we see players who, for example, who've sort of, they're still struggling to sort of get past their own self from a coaching point of view. They're sort of living on their own glory, and I've seen a lot of academies and coaching academies and certain players who just make it about them, and they're so sort of they're still sort of stuck in the past, really. And do you not think sometimes that some of the best players that we see out there, they don't make great coaches because they struggle to get out of their own way, Tony? They sort of, they struggle to get out of their own way in terms of they focus a lot of, about their own sort of careers. They have to be sort of, move forward as a coach. You can't look back anymore, and it's all about the player, like you says.
100%. Look, coaching is completely different to playing. It's different. You got to know how to handle pressure differently. You got to know how to talk to players differently. Because not all the players are the same. And look, in saying that, I think a coach needs to have played the game at a decent level to be a coach. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not disrespecting anyone that doesn't play as coaching. Good luck to them, as long as they love the game. But if you haven't played the game and you don't know the dressing room, you don't know the feel of the dressing room, you don't know what players like, then unfortunately you're not going to be the best coach. You can study all you like, but you're not going to be a top class coach, in my opinion. But players that turn into coaches, I think a lot of them do it because they miss playing. You're still part of the dressing room, you know what I mean? But they're not all going to be good, like you said. Not all coaching going to be good, depending on their behaviour, their mindset, understanding the game. Just because they play professional doesn't mean they understand sitting on the sideline and coaching a team.
And people too,
It's a different thing.
And managing people as well. And that's a great point. I think that there is got to be that sort of balance. I mean, people say the likes of Mourinho didn't play at the highest level, or Wenger didn't, but they all played at a decent level, and they were all decent. But what they did really well is transition. If you look at, say, for example, Mourinho or Wenger, for example, they sort of transitioned really well, but they did play, obviously. I think like you said, understanding the dressing room banter and that sort of stuff, but not being stuck there is the sort of key as well. And I think I heard someone say Jurgen Klopp didn't play at the highest level recently, but he did play at like you said, a decent level, that's for sure. But what he does well is the transitioning. I mean, you don't sort of see a Jurgen Klopp, for example, sort of make it about him. It's about the players. And I don't know any of these guys, obviously, personally. It's only from what I've seen in the media and the media work I've done. But I think exactly what you said, Tony, the sentiment. They understand people really, really well, and that's sort of key, going forward. That's the sort of big thing for any coaches, young coaches listening. Coach Tony Basha on the show, he's produced a lot of players. That's a takeaway for you in terms of understanding play is a key thing, and it depends, different roles in football too. I think that's the important thing. Obviously, different roles. If you're a physio, for example, then it may be helpful to know the dressing room, but it's more important that you're good at your physio job or psychology and so on and so forth. And one thing, obviously, was sort of mentioned, Tony. Being kind enough to sort of join us and share the insight. Obviously, in Europe, in the UK at the moment, I mentioned earlier, we're in lockdown and restrictions are changing. accordingly, and we sort of, we look at the government guidelines, and as much as we love football, the safety of people is always going to take the priority. But it's been tough, and I've spoken to a lot of players, a lot of footballers and coaches, and it's not been easy, and that's not undermining. Obviously there are staff out there working on front line, and that's obviously far more challenging. But what's it been for your young players? I mean, obviously I don't know what the implications are in Australia at the moment with lockdown. No doubt it might be different to here, but what's it been like for them, Tony? Are they sort of finding it challenging, or what are you guys doing to sort of keep the morale high?
Mate, it's a bit tough, obviously, but with the I've been doing a lot of Zoom sessions online.
Yeah.
With the young academy kids, but the older boys, I've been doing one-on-ones with them every day. So
yeah.
I've probably got 20 one-on-ones a day.
Wow. Yeah.
I start from the morning to the night.
Yeah. 4
days a week. So they've been training. They've still been training, which is good. I've been keeping them fit. The government just recently, on Friday, they opened up that we can go back to football training with 9 players and the coach, so 10 players, 10 people.
Yeah.
So the clubs are starting on Monday, tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, we should get back to some sort of normality. We're not as bad as England in regards to the virus. We've been okay because they nipped it in the butt early and they closed the borders.
Yeah.
And anyone that comes from overseas, they put them in quarantine in hotels.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been okay. But yeah, it hasn't been obviously it's been tough.
Mm-hmm.
We're training as a group. It's been tough.
Yeah.
We've still been training. We're still ticking over, which is okay,
Yeah, and that's interesting stuff, and obviously for our listeners, do keep in mind that Coach Tony Basha is joining us from Australia, and the lockdown rules may be different to the UK, and obviously if you're a coach over here, just we sort of strongly suggest that you follow the rules and regulations by the government. By all accounts, some teams have gone back into training in the UK, and I don't know about the listeners, but I've been watching some of the Bundesliga too, and obviously situations, it's affecting every country differently, and Tony's mentioned some important points there, but equally in saying that there's still a lot that obviously all we can do is sort of follow the government guidelines and see what unfolds and go from there. But it just showed a testimony of you, Tony, the hard work you're putting in to do the one-on-one work and to sort of make sure that you're keeping things ticking over for them, which is obviously in football that's all we can do. And the professional footballers I've spoken to in the UK, Tony, they've sort of been doing their own training and they've been working closely with the coaches at the different football clubs and having programs and stuff like that. Have you guys given the players some programs they can do as well on their own, Tony? And is the Zoom, is that what that involves as well, or?
Yeah. So what we do on Zoom, I should take the class on Zoom. We do it like normal academy nights, which they do. So I do the training session online. But you can't do a lot because you haven't got much space at home. But they do just ball skills,
Yeah.
In and out of cones, passing on the wall, right foot, left foot, just basic stuff. But still getting to doing something and keeping the ball at their feet, basically. So when they come back, that they're not rusty. So they've been doing okay, with clubs. The players that are signed to clubs, obviously, probably have a program, and I'm not sure if anyone's going to follow the program, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. There is some, albeit Zoom, some sort of, contact in that respect. I think Zoom is obvious. I mean, I'm doing lectures online through Zoom as well, and it's never. I mean, I'm the first to admit, obviously, it's not the same as being there face to face for a variety of reasons. But it does have a big impact, and the lectures I do are different to from the point of view of the physicality of football. So it's a little bit different in that context. But like you says, I think it's having that. I think for me, Tony, just having someone there. The coach there, is that a big boost, do you think, for them, just to sort of see you and think, okay, you're still in my corner type thing? And obviously young people are probably too proud to admit it, but just having someone there in their corner, and do you think that's a big boost for them to sort of see you there and you're leading from the floor? Yeah,
definitely, man, 100%. I'm like their mentor, basically.
Yeah.
When they see them, they get excited. When I finish the session, they're good kids, we don't take kids that have crap attitude, basically.
Yeah.
If they're good kids, have a good attitude, they come from a good family, we take them on. They're very respectable kids. Like when they see me on Zoom, they get excited, and obviously they all say, they're all polite, saying thank you for the session, always.
Yeah.
So they're always excited to see me. It's always exciting to see your coach.
Absolutely.
And your mentor. Obviously, you can go mad in this situation, being at home.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No school, you can lose your mind.
Yeah,
so it's always good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
the person you're used to,
That's a great point, obviously, from a mental health point of view, and the mental health implications at the moment. Obviously, mental health implications we don't know at the moment completely, but one thing's for sure: isolation has a big effect on people mentally. That we know, and we had our last one of the guests that we had was one of the most well-known people in the field of psychology in the world, and he talked about the implications of obviously isolation, and so obviously that's a big thing. And I think for the young players, no doubt, to see the coach, the leader there, would be a huge boost to their morale in these challenging situations that we face with. But it's been really fascinating, Tony. Getting your sort of the insights into the eco. It's been great to hear about him, and it's great to hear that you guys are sort of ticking over and still working towards the vision of providing the players a platform. Obviously, things in terms of your tours may be slightly change or may change due to COVID. But no doubt when sort of things start to move forward, you guys seem to be really on the pulse and sort of proactive and pragmatic in adapting to the situation. So, Tony, I really want to thank you for coming on board the show. We'll obviously keep in touch, and any new developments, we'll sort of definitely touch base. And it's been great to have you on the show, Tony. Thanks for joining us, and we wish the academy and the players all the very best.
Anytime, mate. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.